Revenge. The evening sunlight cast a dim glow on the road ahead as I drove. Lights from distant houses slowly flickered on, shining in competition with the stars above. Our car climbed the winding road up the mountain, which looked desolate and eerie. Sophia, my wife, remained silent throughout the journey, staring straight ahead without a word. She had been unnervingly quiet for some time, her face emotionless. Though she didn't seem sad, her lack of expression startled me. We reached the house we had reserved, an isolated cabin in the forest, with a road conveniently passing by. It was quiet, peaceful, but the nearest house was almost 10 minutes away. We unpacked and spent the night in silence. The next morning, she was back to her cheerful self, smiling brightly. She kissed my cheek and walked me to the car. "Come back for lunch, okay? I'll make something for us," she said happily, pleased that I was going into town to pick up some things for our long holiday. She hugged me with love, and I returned her embrace with all the love I had for her. Her warmth and touch were the best things in my life. As I drove, I thought of how lucky I was to have such a beautiful, loving wife. I decided that, besides getting what she needed, would also find a special gift for her today to make this holiday memorable. By late morning, I had finished all the shopping, my car trunk filled with supplies and a special gift for Sophia. Suddenly, my phone beeped with an emergency alert. It was a warning to locals. An escaped convict was on the loose, heading toward this area, and the police had yet to capture him. He was believed to be hiding in the nearby forest. I quickly tried calling Sophia, but there was no answer. Police cars sped past, and I pressed down on the accelerator, heart pounding. I cursed myself for leaving Sophia alone. Who could have known that an escaped convict would end up here? I imagined how terrified she must have been upon hearing the news. I sped along the road, twisting through the woods and cliffs, praying for her safety. Her words echoed in my head, "Come back soon, I have a surprise for you at lunch," spoken with her shy smile. Sophia and I hadn't known each other long before deciding to get married. Ever since, my love for her had only grown deeper with each day. Her subtle smiles and gentle laughs when we talked were what I adored most. However, in public, especially around other men, she became unnervingly quiet, almost as if she was afraid of them. Sometimes, when she was being stared at, she'd ask me to hold her tight, trembling in my arms. But she never explained why she acted this way. I arrived home in the early afternoon, feeling a brief sense of relief. I expected Sophia to come running out to greet me, but instead, what I saw made my blood run cold. Smoke was billowing from the house. Red leaves swirled in the air, and the silence around me was almost deafening. I rushed inside, shouting her name, but there was no response. Smoke filled the house, the strong smell of something burning. I ran to the kitchen, where the source of the smoke came from. Burnt steaks were smoldering on the stove, and in the oven, 2 charred, unrecognizable lumps. Panic set in as I called her name again, but only silence answered me. Tears welled up, and my chest tightened with fear. My legs felt weak as I struggled to think of what to do. Had she run into the forest, or worse, had she been taken? Just then, I heard a faint breathing sound, coming from behind the wardrobe. I dashed over and opened it. Sophia lay there, pale and gasping for air. I knelt down and cradled her limp body in my arms. "Sweetheart, Sophia, are you okay?" I whispered, my voice trembling. She stirred, letting out a faint moan, and slowly began to regain consciousness. I rushed to get her water, helping her drink as her awareness returned. "Sophia, I'm taking you to a doctor." "You'll be all right, I promise," I said, trying to hide my fear. She coughed softly, her eyes filled with terror. I hugged her tightly and realized then that her body was bare, covered in bruises and scratches, large, painful marks left all over her. My tears mixed with rising anger. I held her even closer, not wanting her to see the rage that twisted my face. As I hugged her, her shaking subsided. "He hurt me. He hurt me," she whispered, and I rocked her like a child, comforting her, though every tremble of hers only stoked the fire of vengeance in my heart. That night was the worst, a nightmare we could never forget. By morning, I sat with her, trying to piece together what had happened. Do you remember anything at all? I asked. Her eyes were dull, emotionless as she spoke. He got out of the car and knocked on the door. He came to sell something. He wore a brown suit, carried a large silver case, she said softly. Was he a salesman? Are you sure it wasn't the convict? I pressed. He smiled, friendly at first. But suddenly his clothes changed to orange, and when I resisted, he started hurting me. Then I blacked out. He hurt me. He hurt me, she repeated, before going quiet again. I swore to her, I'll find him. I'll make him pay for what he's done. I'll take care of it myself. Sophia gripped my hand, but when she saw the fury in my eyes, she let go, her face returning to its blank state. Yes, she murmured. I told her, you're coming with me. We're going to find him together. You remember his face, don't you? She nodded eagerly, her face lighting up with excitement. Yes, let's go, she exclaimed. We drove through town, and I explained how I would get revenge. She smiled slightly, a soft chuckle escaping her lips. I'll drive slowly and watch everyone we pass. If you see him, tell me right away, I instructed. We cruised the streets until we reached a hotel. There were 2 cars parked outside, and a man in a brown suit stood nearby, talking on his phone. He opened his trunk and took out a large silver case before heading into the hotel. Sophia clutched my arm and pointed. Is that him? I asked. She nodded, her face pale as she whispered, yes, that's him. That's him, biting her lip until it bled. I parked quickly and followed him into the hotel. There was no one at the reception desk, no cameras, perfect for my plan. I knocked on his door and introduced myself as a restaurant owner looking to buy kitchenware. He invited me in with a smile, telling me he was packing to leave town soon. He stepped into the bathroom, giving me the chance to look through his things. There was nothing much, just clothes and sales documents. But then I saw a family photo, him, his wife, and 3 children. I thought, a man like this doesn't deserve a family. He destroyed mine. When he came back, he saw me looking at the photo and smiled proudly, telling me about each family member. As he bent down to put the picture back, I grabbed the hammer I'd hidden behind my back and swung it with all my strength. His body slumped, and I hit him again, over and over, until he was still. The rage inside me slowly ebbed away. I walked out, knowing it would be hours before anyone found him. Maybe they'd suspect me, maybe not. But it didn't matter, I had done what I needed to do. I returned to the car, where Sophia waited patiently. It's done, I told her. She nodded, staring out the window, emotionless. Good, she muttered. Poor Sophia, the trauma had built a wall between us. We drove through several towns before stopping at a bustling restaurant. But Sophia didn't touch her food. I knew I had to take her far from here, to the best doctor I could find. We stopped at a busy town that evening, hoping the liveliness would bring her back. After a long, exhausting day, I asked her, feeling better? She looked at me softly, smiling at last. But then, she raised her hand and pointed at a man across the room, her eyes wide in shock. That's him, she whispered. That's him, she said again, her finger trembling as she pointed at the man standing right in front of us.